My dear friends, our gospel for today is from the gospel according to St. Matthew chapter 18, from verse 15 to 20. And it is about the steps to be taken when there is conflict. Our theme, therefore, is conflict resolution, the Christian way. I wish to begin by stating the point that as long as we remain humans, there is bound to be conflict. As long as we live with one another, conflict may occur. And in fact, Jesus talking about it should prompt us about the reality of conflict, even in the Christian assembly. But do you know that the most dangerous thing is not that there is conflict or conflict has occurred? The most dangerous thing is the poor handling of conflict when it occurs. Jesus, our divine master, Jesus, our divine teacher, in today's text, gives us the practical steps to take when there is conflict. Step 1. Jesus says, when a brother wrongs you, go to him, point it out to him, and let it be between the two of you alone. My dear friends, what is the usual response to conflict? For some of us, when we feel offended, we pretend there is no issue. In other words, we may sweep it under the carpet. But the question is whether that is the best approach. Once the issue is swept under the carpet, it means that it is buried in the mind. But in future, when something happens which has a bearing on that which is in the mind or in the subconscious memory, it is triggered. And then our response can be volcanic. There are some others who prefer to cut the offender off. So once we are offended, we just cut the person off to have our peace. But we actually have peace when we cut the person off. There are still some of us who, when we are offended, we prefer to tell our family or our friends about the offense. Meanwhile, the person who has offended us, we will never talk to him or her about the issue. There are even times that we may smile with the person. Meanwhile, we are telling our friends or our family what this person has done against us. Coming back to the text, Jesus says we should go to the offender. Mind you, it is a command. By saying go to him, point it out to him, it's an instruction, it's a directive. And as Christians, we have no option but to follow the command of our blessed Lord. You remember when one time Pope Francis was interviewed, and he said that Christians do not actually build walls. Rather, we build bridges. It means then that when there is conflict, our task as Christians is to see how to bring about togetherness, how to bring about harmony. And this is what Jesus is telling us. So it requires prayer, it requires humility. How many of us actually are able to follow this directive by our blessed Lord? That when we feel offended, we can go to the person and talk about it. Now, what happens when the person does not even listen to us or does not agree with us? What do we do? Jesus gives us the second step, which is to have one or two witnesses to go along, to go and meet the person and talk about the issue. This may be very difficult for a lot of us, but unfortunately, it remains a command by our blessed Lord. What happens when, even with the witnesses of one or two, there's still no peace? There's still no understanding. Jesus says the person has to be brought to the church. And that is the third step. This must be interesting. It means that the church has a voice when it comes to conflict resolution, especially when it comes to family and marital disputes. The church cannot be left out. As long as we remain members of the church, we must be ready to seek the support and the guidance of the church when there is conflict. According to our blessed Lord, when all these steps have been exhausted and still there is no peace, what must be the next step? For our blessed Lord, when these three steps have been exhausted, then the person who is the offender must be treated as we treat a tax collector or a Gentile. What does this mean? To treat somebody like a tax collector or like a Gentile? My dear friends, what simply means is that just like at the time of Jesus, tax collectors and Gentiles were seen or perceived as sinners, so meaning that they were outside of the assembly of believers. So this person who persists in wrongdoing and is not ready to even listen to the church means that the person is actually living outside of the assembly of peace, of understanding, of harmony. So that person will be treated like he is an outsider. That person will be treated like the tax collectors and the Gentiles who are outside of the assembly. That person, therefore, is no longer in harmony with the community of believers. So the person, in modern terms, will be referred to as an excommunicated person who is outside of the assembly. But let's take note of this. Being outside of the assembly does not mean that the person is hated. No. Because tax collectors and sinners those days were supposed to be loved by the Christians, by their Christian calling. There was need to still extend love to even tax collectors and Gentiles who were considered to be sinners. So what are we stressing here? That though outside, there's still no total break in rapport. Though outside, there's still a need for a modicum of love or respect, which seeks the general good of the person. Though outside, there's still the need for a modicum of respect, which wishes the person well. Though outside, there's still a need for a modicum of peace, which maintains civility. The excommunicated brother still deserves Christian charity, which we know is the mission of every believer. So just as Gentiles and sinners needed to be evangelized, the Christian still has the task of showing love. And that is why the sinner or the offender cannot be cast out perpetually. There is still a need for Christian love to be shown the person. And that is why from the second reading of today, it begins with Romans chapter 13, verse 8, when it says, "Owe no one anything except the love that binds us together." My dear friends, to conclude, Jesus says, "Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in their midst." And what it simply means is that where there is togetherness, where there is unity, where there is family, where there is friendship, Jesus, who is the Emmanuel, is present. But where there is disharmony, where there is division, where the family is broken, where the assembly is divided, Jesus is absent. Remember, St. Paul says in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 14, that Jesus had to die to break down or to destroy the wall that separated the Jews from the Gentiles. That enmity that was there, it took the death of Jesus for it to be destroyed. We cannot be followers of Jesus and still build walls. And that is why Jesus talks to us today about conflict resolution, the Christian way. May God bless us all. Amen.